Good morning, everyone. My name is Mila. I'm a second-year student here at Haas, and along with Marion, we are the VPs of content for this year's conference. We are super excited about our amazing lineup of speakers today, and in a few minutes, we will kick off with an incredible and touching story by one of our speakers.
In what here at Haas we call Story Salon, you will hear 4 different stories from speakers sharing their careers and personal journeys. They will describe the experience as a working parent, the role of men in allyship support, the importance of inclusion at all levels in the company, and how Wonder Women made it to the top in male-dominated environments.
Please listen carefully as they share their hearts and minds in 15-minute speeches specially designed to you. Be mindful of the personal content you're about to hear and breathe in the insights of these inspirational stories.
For our first speakers, I would like to invite on stage Melissa Young, who will introduce our first guest.
Elena Gomez is the Chief Financial Officer of Zendesk and has over 20 years of experience in leadership and finance, with the last 10 being focused in growing SaaS businesses. Throughout her career in finance at Fortune 500 companies, including Visa and Charles Schwab, Elena has built a track record of strategic financial leadership and accomplishment. Prior to Zendesk, Elena spent 6 years at Salesforce, leading the finance and strategy organization, supporting the company's largest revenue-generating teams. Elena has gained experience in managing global growth and scaling finance operations for multi-billion-dollar companies. She is helping to grow and scale Zendesk as it broadens its enterprise reach and expands its product portfolio. In addition to her operational role, she serves as an audit committee chair for Smartsheet and PagerDuty. When not in the office, Elena has her hands full at home. She enjoys spending time with her husband and raising their 2 daughters, and is even the basketball coach for the eldest daughter. There are many qualities that set Elena apart as a leader, and some of the most impactful are her focus on empathy and honesty. And when bringing these qualities to the workplace, she has encouraged and fostered a more open, collaborative, and inclusive work environment. So without further ado, let's bring Elena to the stage and hear more about her.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll just start by saying my hardest job is coaching 10-year-old girls and trying to keep their attention. So I hope I can keep your attention today, but that's harder than my day job, really. And last week we won our game 12-5, so I was pretty proud. Anyhow, I thought I would share a couple of stories, a couple of thoughts about my career, and some things that have been with me my entire career and some things I've learned along the way. And let me just start by saying there's really 3 or 4 things I think about that have been with me my entire career. One is work ethic, and I still have that, but I had it very early on because I knew I didn't know a whole lot going into my first job, and so I sort of suffered a little bit from confidence, but I knew that if I showed up and raised my hand, spoke up, that would help me, and if I was the one on time, and those really basic things. And today, as a leader, I definitely know who on my team has high work ethic. It's super clear to me, and those are the people I pick to do the big projects and so on, because I know they're going to be there, and so that's one thing. I think the other thing that I learned early on was having intellectual curiosity. I'm a little bit of a geek that way, and so I've often felt that outside of the day-to-day job, what can I do to make myself learn more? And it's just a simple example. I'm about to get on a flight today, actually, and part of what I'm going to do is read about other companies. I'm a CFO. You would think, well, maybe she knows a lot about what's going on, but actually I don't. And I know that I'll be a better CFO if I read these articles. So I had my IR team send me 5 boring, probably to you guys, but pages of stats about my competitor companies. So that's not something anyone's asking me to do, but I know that if I can continue to learn, I'll do better at my job. And then the last thing I would say is focus. When I was early in my career, I often thought, gosh, if I get more responsibility or if I get a bigger team, I'll do better. And the reality is I spread myself so thin that I realized I was not really doing as well as I could if I had just picked the 1, 2, or 3 projects instead of all 10. And I'll say that when you focus is when you do your best work, and when you're spread thin, we all understand. We all been there. We've done too much, and you realize you don't do as well as you could. So that's incredibly important, and I continue to use that in my career. I have so many things I want to do, but I've learned that it's more important to get an A on the things that matter, and it's also equally okay, even though it sounds weird, to turn in C papers sometimes, because that paper may not matter as much as the most important project. So those are things I've taken with me my entire career. There's certain things I've learned along the way in my career. So one, I call them the 5 R's. So risk is one of them, and importance of taking risks. The next one is resilience, the importance of being resilient. I think the dean talked a little bit about that. The other one is focus on being respected and not so much on being liked. Recognition, make sure you say thank you, and I'll share a story about that. And the last one is relevance, and that's so, so important. When you're in a conversation in the workplace, or even actually in your own personal context, having relevance is so important to the dialogue you're about to have. And so what I mean by that is if you walk into a room and you start getting into some details before you've really set the context of what you want to talk about, it can completely distract you from what you're trying to accomplish. And so really focus on providing whatever context you need for the conversation. Risk, I'll tell you, when I took the job at Zendesk, so Zendesk is not a company most people probably know. How many people know Zendesk? Oh, wow, okay. That didn't used to be the case. I'll tell you, every time I take a job, I call my mom, and 5 different jobs over my career, roughly. And so when I called and told her, hey, Mom, I'm going to go work at KPMG, it was actually a Haas alum, so go Bears. But anyway, when I got my first job, I had to explain to my mom, there's these big 6 accounting firms. I want to get a job in one of them. And so I sort of educated her on that. She was awesome. She said, awesome, you got that job. Called her, said I was going to go work at Charles Schwab. Understood that. I think she had an account there. Told her, I'm going to go work at Visa, no problem. I have a bank, I have a credit card. Told her I was going to go work at Salesforce.com, and she's like, wait, what? What is that? And at the time, I remember thinking, what am I going to do in tech? Like, I've never really worked in tech, but I'm going to go for this job. So fast forward to 3 years ago, and I had to tell my husband, who's also been an amazing partner, so she's right, pick the right partner. Hey, honey, I want to go take this job at this company. It's called Zendesk. He's like, what? Like, you're going to leave Salesforce and go do a job as Zendesk? And he looked me in the eye and he said, you really want to do this? And I said, yeah, I think I do, but I'm not sure I can do it. And then he said, well, wait a second. So every single job you've had, it seems like you've done okay. So why is it now you don't have the confidence to take this job? And I was like, I don't really know. And he said, well, I think you should take the job. And so the point about having the right partner is so important. He believed in me when I thought, gosh, I've never been a CFO before. Can I do this job? And so that was my example of a risk I've taken in my career. So far, it's gone well. So that's sort of the high level, the 5 R's: respect, respect. That's one I wanted to talk about. The importance of speaking up is kind of embedded in this concept of respect. Often, you find yourself in a room with folks, and you want to say something, but you're not really sure, and you don't want to maybe upset the other person. But I'll tell you, for me, it's often worked better if I actually speak up and I don't have the popular opinion in the room. Because that is way more important than actually being the person that everyone likes. Because at the end of the day, you want the best outcome for the company. So an example of that, we were trying to make a decision around a partner that we're going to use at Zendesk. And the partner is a well-known partner. Everyone wants to do business with them. Of course, it'd be great for Zendesk to be attached to them. But the economics and the strategy just didn't make sense. And so I had 4 or 5 people around the room, all men, by the way, saying, like, yeah, we got to do this, and this really makes sense. And then I said, well, actually, let's step back. Does it really make sense for us at this point in our journey? I can appreciate if we're maybe a $2 or $3 billion company, but we're a $700, $600 million company. Does this context really make sense? And so they went away, probably pissed off at me because I sort of shut it down. And then they came back around and said, you know what? That was the best decision for us now, because we appreciate that we might, as great as that would be, it's probably not right for us now. And so it took courage to do that. I would have never done that earlier in my career, but I wish I would have. So you guys pick your moments, but it's really important to speak up. The last thing I'll say is, how much time do I have, by the way? Just making sure. I'm good? Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure. So I want to skip now to, in the readout you saw, I'm going to talk a little bit about diversity and inclusion. And one element, and I'm super passionate about that, and the one thing I often say is you can have diversity, but if you don't have inclusion, it doesn't really matter. And an example of that would be, if it's almost like saying, let's get everyone on the team, but then let's keep some players on the bench. It's kind of the same idea where you can hire a bunch of people into your company. We've done that actually at Zendesk. I'm a female CFO. I'm proud to say we have a female CIO. We have a female CCO. It's all good. But it doesn't really matter that we have those people if they're not really participating in the day-to-day strategy. It also doesn't really matter if in the small things that are done day to day, there isn't this tone of inclusion. And so an example would be, sometimes people come into our executive meeting and they're women. And it used to be that there was mostly men around the table, men myself. And you could tell when they walked into the room, they kind of looked around and was like, wow, there's this feeling of intimidation. And I could sense that. I had enough sort of EQ to really understand that they probably needed someone to say, Asta, tell us what you think about this, because she was feeling a bit insecure. And so all of you, when you're in those moments, whether you're already working or in your student career or early in your career, it's really important to acknowledge when you're in that situation and help each other out. It sounds super simple, but it's super important to really call out your peers in those contexts. And then the last thing I'll say is around EQ, this concept of EQ and IQ. That's such an important element of inclusion. When you talk about inclusion, that's the ability to give space for someone else to feel included. If you don't have EQ, which is really your ability to relate to people, your ability to understand emotion, your ability to express emotion, your ability to scan the room and understand what's going on besides maybe the content that you're talking about, that has helped me in so many ways over my career. And it's really not being tone deaf, for example, to maybe what's happening in the room. And an example of that I have right now with I have a team of folks on my leadership team, and I already know there's a couple of people on my team who, they're probably not going to be the best friends. They're probably not going to be out at the bar drinking beers together. But guess what? They're on my team, and I need to make the whole team productive. So I did this recently where I got the team tickets to a Warrior game. And I invited, and I should actually really say they kind of almost hate each other, to be honest. Melissa knows. And so what I did is I invited them both to a Warrior game with their team. And so I sent them separate emails saying, hey, you guys are going to a Warrior game, bring 10 people. You're going to Warrior, bring 10 people. And both of them asked, well, who's the other person going? And so I told them, and I'm sure they probably rolled their eyes. But as a result of that, they spent some time talking. It wasn't completely there, but they didn't know that I was completely orchestrating this for them to be together. But that's me not being tone deaf and me having high IQ. I know very much that I need them to be on the same team. And so the outcome hopefully will be that over time, we will together as a team, because I can't have one detractor, if you will. I need everyone kind of swimming in the same direction. And so that's just an example. There's so many more examples around that. But I think the key is as you develop in your career, as you think about your career, it's not always about being necessarily the smartest in the room. It's really about combining sort of your EQ with your smartness and putting those two together. And I think that has served me well. So with that, I'd like to close out. Thank you.